So today we are back inside the Logosol PH260 Moulder planer, and we're going to change our lower knives. Now, true to form, I've already done one just so that I could remind myself how to do it and then be able to explain to you guys how easy it is. I was hoping I'd be able to get in here and not have to make any major changes because I've already got the machine set up the way I liked it to run this V-groove cedar. And then, of course, I ran a few samples and I realized, I'll show you, I ran a few samples and I'm getting this scratch all the way down, right? And I'm running these face down, so that's in my bottom planer. I've already taken out one of the knives. Of course, as soon as I saw that scratch, I started looking at my knife trying to see where the damage was at, and y'all tell me. It's almost impossible to see, right there. Right there. I can get the camera to focus on it right there. That's it. Tiny little serrations. I don't know if you flip it around, maybe it's more obvious from this side. But you can see where it got heated. It hit metal or something. I'm thinking it hit the spacer plate that I had in here. I had the 1mm spacer plate in here, and for some reason it had worked its way forward, and I think it hit that. But of course, you know, if it hits one knife, it hits both knives. So we gotta change out bows, which are sold in a set of 2. What to do with the bag here? I had the part number I was going to show you guys, but you can find them on Woodmiser's website because again, here we go. This is the PH260, which is the predecessor to the MP260. There's your part number for your lower knives that fit on this machine. So anyway, to get started, you have to remove your back fence here. Or back fence, whatever. This is your guide rollers, your press rollers, basically. There's one here and one here. This sits in right over here, okay? That sits in there to help keep your workpiece pushed over against your fence. And you have to just loosen this nut here on top, that's it. Loosen that nut, and then you can slide the whole thing out of your way. If you want to take it completely out of the machine, it gets a little squirrely. You may have to lower your bed all the way down enough to just take it out under the rollers, but I just pulled it to the side and got it out of my way. You also have to take off your front, what I call your first fence or your infeed fence. It sits right in here, and it sits inside those sleeves. Now, I was getting excited at first. I thought, okay, I'm just gonna loosen this bolt here and that bolt there and take that whole assembly out to where I don't have to change my setting. But unfortunately, these bolts, which are what actually tighten it down, these bolts also go all the way through into the table. So I did have to loosen those off anyway and pull the fence out. I couldn't just pull the bracket out like I had hoped. But that's okay, because that's a pretty easy one to adjust. I just put a straight edge in here, reference off this back fence and reference off my front cutter, and then I just tap this front fence over a little bit, you know, 1/8 of an inch or whatever. So with those two fences, with this out and that fence out, you can access your planer head. And like I said, I've already changed the one, but all you have to do, if you don't have your factory wrench, you do have to get one that's real skinny. You can see this one here was actually ground down a little bit thinner from factory. Get this wrench in here, and you're effectively tightening these bolts into the gib. By tightening the bolts into the gib, you actually loosen the gib, because the bolts, when you tighten the gib, you actually loosen the bolts out of the gib and they press against the back of the head. So you just have to loosen all these and be real careful because, like I said, it's hard to get your wrench down in here and really get on it, and it's really easy to feel like you're on it, but it's because your wrench is actually just jammed down in that slot, and then you can strip your bolt heads off. And if you strip them off, you're gonna have a heck of a fight. I had to change the blades, and most planers are set up this way if they have a gib at least. I had to change the knives in my Powermatic 209 that I have up at school last year, and one of these was stripped off, and we just could not get a wrench. We finally had to find a wrench that was one size smaller. I think it was like it was like a 12 millimeter, or what's this one? This is a 10. It was like a 10 millimeter, and we had to hammer a 9 millimeter onto it enough to break it loose, and then of course had to go find a new bolt, which was even more of a challenge because I don't have a lot of metric bolts in my inventory. But I had to go find a new bolt that would fit in there, and then cut it off shorter and rethread it. It was a whole thing. So anyway, you get all these loosened off. You don't necessarily have to run them all the way in. You can see they're loose now. That gib's got just a little bit of wiggle to it. You don't need a lot, okay? And then you've got a screw head here and a screw head back here. And you just loosen these. They're not torqued down. These fit into notches in the blade. And so you just loosen these two screws. Ooh, that one's actually kind of snug. Be careful doing this because you can see my cutter head is rotating. So make sure you don't rotate the head down and lose a screw inside the machine or something. That would suck, because there is a dust collection port underneath of this that is a pain in the butt to take off. I've had to take it off to change the motor. I try not to take those screws all the way out if I don't have to, but I also didn't loosen my gib quite all the way. There you can see I got out of the back one, right? So we just raise them up just high enough that we can wiggle that blade and get out of it. This front one, I'm still not quite off of it. So we're gonna, let's check that out. Lay my phone down. Okay, I'm gonna loosen this one out just a little bit more. I feel like it's out now. And look at that, it's got some magnetism to it. It's wanting to stick. So those screws are trying to ride out with me. But okay, you pull that blade out, and now you can see that notch. Okay, so you see your notch there and your notch there. It's kind of funny, when I called Woodmiser to order these because they didn't show 2-day shipping on their website. They just showed standard shipping for 26 bucks, and it didn't say, like, it didn't give me options, and I needed them quick. So I called to order them, and I'm looking at the description on the website, and she's reading off the description, and she says, oh yeah, standard size blade, blah, 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 with notch. And I was like, well, I'm looking at the description on your website, and it doesn't say with notch. And I was like, but yes, I need it with the notch. I don't know. Some cheaper, simpler planers don't have a notched blade like that, and they've got a blade that's just got little alignment pins or whatever, and it can only go in one way. It's not adjustable. These are technically adjustable by raising those screws up or down a little bit, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Let me go ahead and get this one set back in because I'm gonna need two hands. Let's see if I can set my phone down again, maybe. It's kind of handy. I'm just balancing my phone on the top rollers. Okay, so we're gonna go right in here, and again, real careful to get in with that screw, and you don't have a lot to hang on to once you get in there because you're just hanging onto the tip of the blade basically. Maybe a pair of pliers or something would be good, but I'm in on the front. I'm trying to loosen the back a little bit to get in under it without rotating the front and losing control. I want to make sure that front bolt doesn't fall in. I can't get that back one. I want to drop back in. It came out already. I may have to take them out. You guys get the point. Let me stop this video and get it put in there for you. All right, we are back. I just had to fidget with it a little bit. Last step is to take your depth guide here. And honestly, this is the first time I've ever used this thing. I normally just kind of go through and just kind of felt for it with my thumbnail and just memorize how I liked it. But you set this on top, and you see there's that little square shoulder underneath, basically. And so you set this so it sits on your golly, what do you call it? head, whatever, the main planer head. And then I just scoot it back and forth and try to feel for it to catch the edge of that knife. And so I raise that knife up a half turn at a time, half turn on that screw, raise it up a half turn at a time until it catches, and then go down a half turn and check it again. And just keep doing that half turn at a time on both sides. And see, even here, no, just kidding. It was that screw right there was hidden. I thought it was the blade catching, but it wasn't. So right here, doing the same thing, and there's no catch. But if I back that screw here, if I back it out a half an inch or half turn, then it catches. So we want to run it just below a catch. So that should be it. Now, of course, I'll have to go in and tighten my screws. Now, so again, we are tightening the gib, which means we are loosening the screws out of the gib and pressing them against the planer head. That's how we tighten them. And you don't have to go crazy super tight on them. I guess theoretically they could work loose, but I don't know why they really would. I've never had one come loose. But also, if you tighten them too tight, you won't be able to loosen them. So don't go stupid with it. Just nice and snug. Okay. Now, this is what I was telling you on this fence here. With that planer in, we're gonna be real careful not to try to ding our brand new blade. Bring this fence over and you'll see it just sits in this slot right here. Which I've got some debris in there, just sawdust. I wanted to clean all this out, but of course we have this machine set up outside in our lean-to, and to plug in this machine and the dust collector, I have to raise up the garage door there and then run cords underneath and yada 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 yada. Okay, so this just square plate sits in there, and just kind of work it back and forth to wiggle it in. And it's got to go all the way in till it goes underneath this, just like that. That little plate hits there to help deflect your cuttings in, and that little plate, just that lip, holds down. Now I made that black mark on it before I pulled it out, and the black mark was not exact. It was about like that, give or take, because I used a Sharpie, so I couldn't quite get in tight against that screw. So we're gonna see, now look, see that also wiggles. So I'm gonna pull that down a little bit because it was tight when I made the mark. Let's come back off just a little bit. And basically, if you set this fence not quite in the exact same place, it's gonna be okay, because you've got some play in these springs and these rollers. If you set it too far in, then the board will literally just like hit that. It'll push the wheel back and hit that, which would be crazy far in. If you're too far out, you just get less pressure on your workpiece. So you want to get it pretty close to where it was. Okay, so we get that back in where it needs to be. Tighten our screw down. And again, you do need to tighten this one down real good, because just repetition of your boards hitting this and flexing it, it will try to wiggle that thing over. I've had it work its way loose on me before, and then I couldn't figure out why my rollers weren't touching anything. Okay, that's tight. Now again, at this point, I have not done any adjustment on my width, and that's, on my height. Yes, I lowered the bed a little bit to work, but we have this little stopper that's preset, so when I'm ready to cut again, I'll just raise back up and hit that stop and be good to go. Lastly is our fence, your infeed fence, or your right side, your first fence. And it's just got to line up. I had those loose, but I had to drive it out with a hammer. It didn't want to really come out readily. This is where you probably got to loosen these screws in the floor a little bit, just to give you some wiggle room. But you guys get the picture on that. Once you get it started in, golly, that one doesn't want to. Where's it at? Right there. I'm gonna try to pull that back and get my first one started in on the outside here. Oops, see that? Doggone. It doesn't want to play. There we go. Got them both started. Okay. Now with them both in, this may be the only thing that I have to measure, but with them both started, just use a hammer. This isn't aluminum. I believe it's cast aluminum. So be careful beating on it. Don't beat it too hard. Get it right about where you think it needs to be. And then, like I said, I'm going to have to get a straight edge. I'll just show you for an example. I've got my old blade here. I use, my wife's got some nice woodpecker straight edges. So I reference off this back fence. Make sure your blade just touches, your first cutter just touches. And then you extend your straight edge on past up to here. And you want it to take off, you know, depending on how good your material is. I normally set it to take off about 1/8 or 3/30 seconds, something like that. Okay, so I'll have to get that tuned in, but otherwise the blade change is done. So good luck if you got a machine like this. They're not terrible. Like I said, it's a little intimidating when you first look at it because there's a lot of parts and pieces. But you just got a couple little specialty tools that really help, and you can swap things around pretty quick. Okay, I'll just show you all this at the end since I got it out. It's nice woodpecker, high precision, straight edge. So I figure my reveal between my second fence, what I call the outfeed fence. I figure my reveal between here and, of course, your squared off shoulder here, right? So then I hold my blade, my straight edge tight against that fence, and I see where it lines up on my cutter. And then I just give myself, like I said, about 1/8 of an inch on that front fence. So I've got that set. I'm gonna tighten these screws back down. When I do tighten those screws back down, it tends to want to pull that fence in or out just a little bit. It's kind of annoying. And it's also annoying that I have a boxed in wrench to tighten this with. And really I need like a ratchet. But I think I stole all my ratchets out of this toolbox and put them in a different toolbox like an idiot. I will say that's a big deal. That like really saved me buying this machine, not knowing anything about it, to have the prior owner had a toolbox dedicated to this machine with all the specialty tools and all the little odd wrenches and things that screwdrivers, Allen heads, all the little oddball things that you need specifically to service this tool. We had them all organized that way. So again, we're just gonna snug both these down real nice. Make sure that fence can't move on us. Once they're real good and tight, we'll check it one more time and we'll be done.